Still hear me, Nancy? Nancy? Carrie,
I can hear you,
hear me?
Wayne.
Yep, okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep, I hear you loud and clear. I don't know if Nancy can hear us.
It doesn't look like it.
Nancy, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're muted. Oh, we can hear Nick.
Yeah.
Just
The tech and executive session went so smoothly. I figured
I know.
the meeting was going to go great.
you figured wrong.
Right.
Nancy, can you hear us? We can't hear you. You're on mute. You're muted, Nancy. Gee.
We can't hear anything. It
Nope.
looked like Barry was talking too. No. Wayne, they're doing the Pledge of Allegiance.
I can relive. She said it's not working.
Something's definitely not working because we can't hear anything.
Oh, God.
We can't hear anything and Nancy's muted. Well, we can't hear anything, so, and she's muted. Nancy's muted, okay? Bye. Bye.
Can they hear us?
No,
Oh. It's like so easy on your phone. You hit the little button, it unmutes you. I guess it's not that easy on this.
well, closed session works so good.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. That's what's surprising. It worked perfectly for closed.
It just can't seem. It seems like every meeting, it's just always something terrible. We have no luck.
Yes, we do. We have bad luck.
Right. What
Hey,
does that
well,
say? If you didn't have bad luck, you wouldn't have
like
any
you
luck
no
at all.
Yeah, no luck at all. Yeah. Oh God.
Hello? You want me to mute myself?
Wayne, you're still on.
I could hear you, Nancy. No,
Right,
now I can't hear you anymore.
can you hear me, Carrie?
I can hear you.
We cannot hear you at the moment.
Oh.
Okay, how about now? Now we can hear you, Nancy. You're not muted anymore.
I can hear you now. I just put up the volume
Okay, you were muted before.
because I'm working on the microphone. So now
Okay.
I unmuted the computer so we can talk.
Okay, because then you can't hear.
Right.
If you're muted.
So
Okay.
once the audio's up, I'll mute the computer so I don't get feedback.
You want us to mute ourselves unless we're
No,
talking?
no, no, you're fine for now.
Okay, good.
That's probably why it's rebooting. Are you comfortable with me here? Am I too close?
Nancy,
Yes,
at the end of each vote, please say it was 10-0, 9-1, whatever, because we can't hear the votes sometimes.
very good, okay.
Okay.
Error.
Excuse me.
Yes. It's there's a sign-in sheet by the podium. Anyone who'd like to speak could fill out the sign-in sheet so we can go in order. And just know everyone who's speaking in what order to be in. Thank you very much.
We will be going in order according to the sign-in sheet.
Yes. Carrie and Wayne, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, Chris.
Mr. Fitros?
Yeah,
Great, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. We could start with the roll call and opening statement.
Mr. Verselli? Dr. Martinez?
Here.
Mr. Fernandez? Mr. Fitros?
here,
Mr. Gomes?
Here.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Here.
Mrs. Rodriguez?
Here.
Mr. Thiemann? Mr. Cathcart? President Gibbons?
Here.
Also present, Dr. Haynes, Acting Superintendent, Mrs. Loyacono, Assistant Business Administrator, Mr. Wayne Demikoff, State Monitor, and Ms. Carrie Wright, Board Attorney.
Thank you very much.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend public meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Ridgefield Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Bergen Record, Municipal Building, Board of Education offices, and the district website. Public participation will be conducted both in person and virtually through Zoom. All public must be muted throughout the meeting. Public participation comments are limited to 5 minutes. The public will be able to both speak and be seen by the board when participating virtually, telephonically, via Zoom. Individuals participating virtually that wish to make comments during public participation will need to raise their hand by clicking the blue hand icon at the bottom of their Zoom window. Individuals participating by telephone that wish to make comments during public participation will need to hit *9 on their telephone to raise their hand. The Business Administrator Board Secretary will then unmute individuals one at a time to speak in the order that their hand was raised.
Thank you, Ms. Loyacono. Would someone like to move the minutes?
Approve.
Trustee Verselli and Trustee Gomes?
Any comments or questions regarding the minutes? 7/21, July 21st, July 22nd, and August 14th? Seeing none. Mr. Verselli?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes?
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez? Mr. Fitros?
yes,
Dr. Martinez? Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. Thiemann?
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart?
Yes.
President Gibbons?
Yes.
Motion passed.
If we have communications.
I have a statement to read.
Thank you, Ms. Loyacono.
Mrs. Grabstein asked me to read this in her absence. I wanted to start out by saying that I am fortunate to oversee a team of very hardworking and knowledgeable individuals who show their dedication to the Ridgefield Park Public Schools every single day. With that being said, I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly acknowledge two of my direct reports who have gone above and beyond over the last few months to ensure we are prepared to open schools safely and with the technology we need for a successful start to the 21-22 school year. I'd first like to thank Mike Daglitz for the countless hours he and his team worked on numerous occasions to literally keep us afloat. We've experienced some particularly bad weather these past few months that have made it extremely challenging to oversee and track the myriad of construction projects currently underway in our district, but Mike makes it seem effortless. Mike worked through the night and days during Hurricane Ida on the cleanup across the district to ensure our schools were dry and we could open safely. His work ethic is admirable. For that, Mike, I am very grateful. Thank you. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Simone Kelly for the countless hours she has worked with her team to set up our new laptops for students and staff. The order for new computers was placed quite late in the summer, though not through her fault. As a result, Simone worked evenings and weekends to ensure we are prepared for the first day of school. She simultaneously spearheaded efforts to research, purchase, and implement cybersecurity software to keep our students and staff data secure while minimizing the threat of a cybersecurity attack. I am also very grateful to Simone. Thank you. We both take pride in your work. You both take pride in your work. Thank you for the dedication you show to Ridgefield Park students and staff every day. I am very grateful to have you both on my team. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more communications? Okay. Committee reports? Yes, trustee. Cathcart.
I attended it along with the board president, another planning board meeting on the projects that are going to be built on Challenger Drive. To date, they have approved one. They're about to approve another, and another is online. Those units, I believe, are approximately 1,556, which 10% of those would have to be, by law, low-income families, which are 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. We submitted a demographic study showing a decline, but I have some numbers that are really disturbing for this year. We have 246 cleared registered students, and we have 44 open more to be put in the process. If these projects go through, the anticipated increase is between 80 and 120 new students to the district, which the Board of Ed will receive no compensation for, but the town would receive $490,000 a year. When you have a project this big, the town would probably give them tax abatement. We had a demographic study done. I think we need to see if we can get an addendum with these new numbers to that demographic study. Because as it stands now, we're bursting at the seams. If we get another 80 to 120 students, I don't know where we're going to put them. We will be attending the next planning board meeting on the next phase of this project, but there's 3 very large projects being built.
Thank you, trustee Cathcart. Trustee O'Neill, policy?
The policy committee met on September 2nd, 2021. Present were President Gibbons, Dr. Haynes, Mr. Martinez, Dr. Martinez, sorry, Berlinda Rodriguez, Bernard Gomes, David Disler, the lawyer, and myself. We discussed our current meeting policy and the role of the presiding officer. We also discussed how we can make our meetings more effective. I'll be reading a statement later on to go into detail.
Thank you, trustee O'Neill. Trustee Rodriguez, faculty and programs.
The Faculty and Program Committee met yesterday, September 14th, 2021. Those present were Dr. Martinez, Mrs. O'Neill, Mr. Gomes, Dr. Haynes, and myself. We discussed a tentative social justice subcommittee meeting. Dr. Haynes will reach out to the previous members and district personnel to hold a meeting towards the end of November. We also discussed the board goals for adoption, which is on tonight's agenda, FP 34. In addition, the public will have access to the curriculum guides in the near future. And we briefly discussed the new job description, which is on tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee. Finance and insurance, we'll be scheduling a meeting soon. Anything from personnel, trustee?
Can I clarify something?
Yes,
It's related to the finance committee. There was a little bit of confusion. I think I caused a little bit of confusion the last time I spoke, right after the finance update, the finance committee update. Some people have told me that it sounded like I said we were operating at a deficit. I did not say that we were operating at a deficit. What I said was that we were operating at less of a surplus than we were accustomed to in prior years. So I just wanted to make that clear that I did not say we are operating in a deficit. What I meant to say was that we are operating at a lower surplus than in prior years. Thank you.
thank you for that clarification, Dr. Martinez. Unless anyone has anything else to say, we're going to move on to the trustee Gomes. I'm sorry. The superintendent's report. Sorry, the class.
And Mrs. Leonacona, can you go ahead and promote Nurse Karen as the first part of the superintendent's report? Let me know if she's there. Great, thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Just wanted to start off how I've been starting off the meetings since last year, was just a little update of the COVID cases that we get report from in the town. As of today, as of yesterday, 9/14, there was 13 additional cases brought about that in the town this week. So that's similar to the week that we saw before, still kind of in the double digits. I did want to discuss a few things this evening. Number one, probably the most important thing, now that school is open, students are back and we're seeing all of our students back, which is wonderful in the buildings. But at the same time, we need everybody to remember that it is super important to screen your children the night before or the morning of, before you go to school. Every Sunday, a blast goes out with a little friendly reminder to check that list of symptoms. If your child is experiencing anything, please reach out to your nurses. Please keep your child home and then call the nurse. Do not send your child to school and then decide to update us later on the day if they're not feeling well. We are trying to be super vigilant here and trying to keep our staff and our students as safe as possible. There's some questions, I believe, Dr. Haynes, in regards to vaccination for teachers and staff, members, correct? Sorry,
Correct.
I caught you while you were drinking,
No,
sorry.
correct, yes.
Okay, so as the governor has stated, by October 18th, all staff members are required to be vaccinated. If they choose not to be vaccinated, they will have to be tested. At this time, according to the health department, it goes by the Cali score. And we saw a lot of the Cali score last year. It kind of is a color coding of the county area. And as the increase of the numbers of COVID cases goes up, so does the color of the Cali score. Right now, we are at a yellow. So the health department is telling us that if you are unvaccinated and you are a staff member in the Ridgefield Park School District, you will be tested twice a week. That goes for all staff members, anybody that is within our buildings, bus drivers, teachers' aides, general staff members in our building, custodians, lunch aides. Even if you may be somebody that's coming in and working in our building as an outside service, just as a traveling nurse that might come in to us, speech therapist or anything else outside, they too, again, have to follow the guidelines. They do need to be vaccinated. If not, if they're traveling into our buildings every 2 weeks to see a student, then they're going to have to show proof of their vaccination status or show us proof of their test prior to entering our building. Is any questions in regards to that from the board members? I don't think so. Okay. So we had a pretty good opening week, I think. I think the kids are happy to be in. It's nice to have kids. It's been super busy in the nurse's office throughout the district, and that's just us all getting back to seeing kids on a regular basis, and the kids kind of getting acclimated to the buildings too. We're going to do everything possible to keep everybody safe. And I think that's all for tonight. Any questions?
No, thank you, Nurse Aguilar.
Thank you very much.
And we second that. We're very happy to have students in, and we hope this is a
Yes.
better year for everyone.
Yeah, it's really a great feeling, it really is. Because last year we had such a small amount, it wasn't the same. So it's nice to have a little bit of normalcy, and I think the kids are great.
So Nurse Erin, before you leave the screen, I know there were some other commendations for other staff members, and I, for one, and I think join the board in congratulating you on all of the hard work you continue to do to both inform the public and keep on top of it and do the contact tracing and inform parents and our community members. Thank you for all of your service. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Nurse
Thank
Aguilar.
you. Thank you.
And speaking about great work and the good service that they do, the next part of the superintendent report involves 3 of our elementary principals. This summer, in addition to all of the Meadowlands and field trips and credit recovery and Title I funds that we spent for students working on ELA and math and dance and all the other programs we ran, our 3 elementary principals were hard at work on some curricular updates and some professional development, especially in August. And I wanted them to take an opportunity to shine here. Nancy, do you want to do the presentation, or I can, either one? I have it up on my screen. Okay, so I'm gonna, for the 3 elementary principals, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Oh, go ahead and who has the close the table? Got it. Okay. Bear with us just a minute. Whoever's the host, if they could just open the screen sharing, I could go ahead and share my screen.
Good evening.
Thank you, everyone. This is Dr. Ferraro. I'm with my elementary administrative team, Ms. Hernandez, and also Mr. Cotta. I can truly say for the 3 of us, it was great seeing all the students come back into school and a lot of these new programs going on, which we wanted to tell you about. I'm going to begin the presentation, and I'm going to begin with SEL, Social Justice Update. If you can move to the next slide. What I want to tell you about for SEL is we all know as educators, the best way to really start a new program is to survey and create some sort of baseline and look for data. So with that said, we did send out a community survey. We analyzed some results of how our community members feel for social emotional learning and the mental health of our students. We also formed an SEL committee with our teachers. We were looking to create or choose a new SEL program, and we wanted input from our staff members, not just administrators choosing it. With that said, I created a committee. We had several meetings, and we selected the program Character Strong. Character Strong is really unique because it uses monthly themes. And as an entire district, we're following these monthly themes. Right now, we're in the month of courage. So you might hear your students talking about all my principals mention encourage a lot in the morning announcements, or my teachers are talking about it a lot. Character Strong is Google friendly, Google Classroom friendly, a lot of short activities, which is helpful for the teachers. It has various authors, discusses social justice, and it uses something called the SERVE method, which basically means you start intentionally for each lesson, engage relationally, respond with empathy, practice values, and exit intentionally. This is a whole school approach. It's not just the teacher, but everyone involved, including administration, as well as we ask for parents to get involved and also talk about courage in the monthly themes. Our guidance counselors continue with their own character education lessons to supplement this. They use a program called Second Step. Lastly, when I analyzed the results of the community survey, I noticed about 10% of our population did not know we have guidance counselors. Please, if a student is suffering or your family is suffering and is going through a tragedy or some sort of mental health, we have guidance counselors in each building that can help. So I want to raise awareness of that. If you can move to the next slide. We are continuing with KSEL's 3 signature practice. You might say, what is KSEL? KSEL is a collaborative for academic and social emotional learning. It is the go-to source for SEL. They review programs, and last year, Jamie Lomax trained our teachers on warm welcomes, engaging activities, and optimistic closures. One of the best ways for SEL is making a student feel welcome in a classroom, engaging them, and having an optimistic closure, motivating them at the end. We're going to continue with Jamie Lomax this year, and we are considering a series of evening mental health workshops. One of them could be about anyone, transgenders and transgenderism and use of different pronouns for students, as well as community resources. That we're considering that. It's all in the development phase. If you can move on to the next. One back, please. Lastly, I want to really highlight our opening day with Fidelity Consulting. Stephen Fidelity, who is a school psychologist and also owns a consulting company, gave us a really awesome opening day PD. He discussed trauma-informed care of students. Essentially, some of our students might have trauma. It could be from the pandemic. It could be from Hurricane Ida. It could be a divorce. And he presented to our staff some training, as well as he's going to be helping build a systematic approach to mental health crises, creating some sort of objective, I guess, way of finding out if a person really needs to be referred to a hospital or not. Lastly, this was breathtaking, in my opinion, is we were trained on listening circles. Our staff had a pandemic topic and a systematic racism topic. 97% of our staff responded to having satisfactory skill to implement listening circles. With that said, I would like to just end with a quote from one of teachers on the listening circles. And I want to continue with this direction for our district. So one of our teachers wrote for feedback on the opening day PD. I found the overall presentation very effective. It was a balanced approach for what educators need for the upcoming school year: mental health awareness of students and social justice. There were conversations that would not have happened in other years because most people were uncomfortable. The facilitator was able to tackle and force us to face the realities of our school and social communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ferraro, and good evening, everyone. The next set of this presentation is based on what we are doing now and where we're going with our mathematics program. So just to fill the parents in, those of you from elementary schools, let's say K to 8, we are using Envision Math, and that is through Savis. I just want to point out, Savis is formerly known as Pearson, and I think it's important that we discuss that because Pearson is the platform that our state testing works with. So the questions that our students are receiving are going to be similar to the questions that they may see on that same type of platform. I think in the whole grand scheme of things, it's definitely more rigorous, it's more challenging, but it's also setting up our students to be more successful at that point when we are taking our state assessments. And that could be the assessment that we're going to take in the fall with the Start Strong, as well as in the spring later on in the year. So I think it's a great idea that we have this program. I also want to mention the program is used in Little Ferry as well. And I think that's important to note, just because the idea is when the students are all done in 8th grade, they come to this building here at the junior senior high school, or I should say the high school level, and they're ready to move on to the next level. Next slide, please. So some changes with elementary. We are not changing Envision, all right? However, we went to look into some ways to help tighten up what we're doing within math curriculum. So over the summer, the curriculum office provided opportunities for our teachers to work with the math consultant. A handful of teachers did take on this opportunity. Her name is Nancy Schultz. Nancy Schultz comes with a very strong background in mathematics. She's regarded as a key facilitator in mathematics in New Jersey, and she helped assist us with mastering the key standards necessary for student achievement. In other words, figuring out which standards are the predominant ones that we're going to find throughout the course of the year and linking it to Envisions so that we're not spending time on certain standards that, I'm going to reword that. All standards are important. However, certain ones show up more within Envisions, and we needed to figure out maybe there are certain lessons within the units we could skip over so that we could spend more time on other standards that unfortunately we may have missed in other years. Next slide. There it is. Okay, thank you. So during the summer, as I mentioned, some of our teachers met with Nancy Schultz, and she helped them find those significant standards. The teachers used the information to connect it with Envisions, like I mentioned, and helped shorten or expand certain areas that would be necessary. In doing so, we created pacing guides for each grade level. The pacing guides are going to be used so that we are all on the same page. And I'd like to explain that on the next slide. This one's short. All right, so currently in the present and moving forward, I have a picture. I know it's a little small, but it's a picture of November. All right, it's a calendar, and it shows what the teacher in a certain grade level should be teaching every specific day based on our actual calendar. That means it's going to help our staff articulate horizontally and make sure that a student at Grant, a student at Roosevelt, or a student at Lincoln should be within a day of learning the same material if they're in the same grade level. A goal of mine, Rome was not built in a day. A goal of mine is to work with the math coach in Little Ferry and try to get all of us on board so that, like I said earlier, we're all coming up to the high school level, learning the same information on the same day. I have to emphasize, I don't know if you could see it, but on the 12th of November, it says buffer. There are situations where we understand sometimes one class may be ahead of others, or maybe I really need to prepare a little more for this next topic. That is added in there as well, so that we can, there is flexibility, and the teachers, look, we don't all teach the same, but the idea is to teach the same information during the same months. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak about Fountain Stephenell Classroom. On the screen, you'll see two pictures, one from the spring and one from this past summer of the deliveries that were brought to our schools. In the springtime, the board had approved the moving forward with the Fountain Simonal classroom, and we were thrilled about that, knowing that we wanted to move forward with new literature and fresh resources for teachers to implement in the classroom. So in the springtime, as you can see, all those boxes, I did not photograph all of them, but that's what every teacher got. On the left, 3 boxes of interactive read aloud. On the bottom is the benchmark assessment kit, and on the top is a mini lesson book. Teachers were able to leave the school year in June with those materials to take home and prepare for the summertime. In that, next slide, the summertime, the district afforded the opportunity for teachers to do some work with Laura Wood, our literacy consultant. 3 areas that they were able to sign up for were, number 1, gaining an understanding of the interactive read aloud and the mini lesson components. Number 2, writing pacing guides to be used by all pre-K through 6th grade staff, again, creating consistency and articulation across grade levels in schools. And the third one is to review various components of the report card. They made some revisions on that based on what they discussed with the pacing guides and what they created. On September 9th, all teachers had a professional development workshop with Laura Wood again, where she modeled an interactive read aloud to the teachers. They reviewed the pacing guides and they discussed how to best implement these wonderful resources. If we can go back one slide just to show the summertime. Those are pictures from the gymnasiums at all 3 elementary schools. Roosevelt received 10 pallets of materials, Grand School 6, and I believe Lincoln School 8. As you can imagine, I was thrilled to be receiving them, a little panicked at the same time, but thrilled to be receiving them, knowing that our kids and our teachers would have the resources that they would need to roll out each component of this program as the year goes on. So we're going to go forward 2 slides. Here's an example of a 3rd grade pacing guide. Again, as Mr. Kata mentioned, this is the best approach to know that teachers are on the same page as one another across the district. This is a glimpse of September, where it's listed what book they will be reading, what mini lesson they will be doing, what activity. These teachers even created also added YouTube links of the read aloud in case there is a child doing asynchronous work at home where they would want to hear the story because they won't have the book with them. This also allows for great articulation meetings across grade levels, which we'll be having monthly on Mondays. I included some pictures of the literature. As you can see, we've discussed this several times, that the interactive read alouds allow for a lot of diversity in literature that the kids will be exposed to. It's really a phenomenal program. Next slide, please. So what's next? What's next is that Laura Wood will continue to consult with the district, providing one-on-one coaching, small group work, professional development. Professional development will also be provided by the company Heinemann, which is the publisher of Fountain Simonal Classroom. They will be coming in and also providing professional development, articulation meetings again, and then the gradual implementation of all new components. So those new components are the guided reading, book clubs, as well as already has been implemented the independent reading. So we've had delivered over like thousands and thousands of books that are getting into the hands of our students, which we know is one of the most important ways to increase reading capacity as well as improving reading levels. Thank you.
Can I ask a brief question? The social justice initiatives are kind of easier to digest, I think, and a lot more feel good. How are your teachers responding to all this new material and all this new, I'm assuming, focus on adherence to curriculum? How are they responding to it, and what are you doing to motivate and inspire?
So as you can imagine, Envisions is in the 2nd year of their program. Last year was the 1st year, and then now Fountain Simonal is the 1st year. And it is overwhelming. It's overwhelming to receive all new resources. It's exciting, but then you get to that point where you're like, oh my God, all the things that I've been doing all these years before, are they not good enough? How do I morph them into doing what everyone else is doing? So there's a lot of supporting going on, a lot of conversations of how can we ease anxiety? How can we support? How can we get, if Laura Wood or myself or the other principals in to help guide teachers to know that it's going to be okay. And we're going to have some bumps in the road, but this is what's best for our community and to move our schools moving forward. One thing I did not mention in my presentation is Little Ferry also did adopt Fountas Pinnell Classroom. So there is consistency across where students will be exposed to the same literature, the same mini lessons when they come into the 9th grade as well. Sure.
If I can also just jump in, to go a little further in a different direction, the younger elementary students, it's a little more difficult to have those heavy topics with social justice. So when we talk about these programs that we're bringing in, it's important to note that the online components as well as the books that these children will have are rich resources with all different types of people within. All right, you're not just going to be looking at a certain book that looks like the way textbooks and reading books were in the 80s and the 90s. We're now looking at different cultures, different races, religions, different handicaps, all within their hands or in their devices. So our children are seeing people that they can actually identify with within the materials that we're providing them.
So again, I want to thank the 3 elementary principals who work really well together, but also they obviously have different gifts and talents and passions, and they're demonstrating that tonight. And applause, I think, is very much warranted. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to share out and ask actually the 3 elementary principals to stick around for a minute, because I'm going to bounce off some of the things that you just did. So a lot of the work that you just saw is available for us to continue because of the CRISA grants. In normal years, we don't have the amount of funding and the amount of vision that we were afforded this year because of the pandemic, because of the state government, because of the federal government grants. So the grant CRISA really provided our district with $1.4 million. And when I wrote that, it was a lot of that went towards this August professional development where teachers worked in groups, where they worked with Conquer Math for pacing guides. And CRISA really was aimed at that. CRISA acknowledged that our students went through difficult times in the pandemic and acknowledged that our students need to wade into the school year kind of slowly. So those pacing guides done for math and science and English language arts with each of those consultants and with each of those teaching groups really helps our staff really in each building to wade in a little slower than they normally would, so that teachers get a sense of each individual child. That's really the goal here through pacing guides. And towards that end, I wanted to go back and thank the board again for the approval of CRISA, for the approval of the Fountas and Pinnell programs, the Envisions programs, the Conquer Math programs. All of those consultants you have approved recently in the past 2 months so that this good work can go forward and our principals can pick it up and run with their staff. So thank you to the Board of Education for all the support that you gave to this. It also, yeah, go ahead. Sure. And that goes back to, you will, I hope if you get sick of me mentioning the district goals, that's a good thing. Tonight, the Board of Education will be adopting the 3 district goals that they carefully crafted. And you'll see how the work that 3 principals just presented really dovetails nicely into these 3 goals. For example, the first goal, which is really about social and emotional learning and social justice, to build PK-12 systems of support, instruction, and student opportunities that ensure that, and this is the important point, all children are known, included, and cared for, and that guide all children as they develop their self-awareness, identity, and sense of urgency. Some of the things you've heard about there are trauma-informed practices and listening circles, but I would also suggest the Fountas and Pinnell books, and I'm going to give you 3 examples of 3 different grade levels that Natasha Hernandez just presented. First grade, Celebrating Diversity, supports that first district goal for students to have a sense of self-respect, to respect others, and to engage in conversations about celebrating diversity. Third grade, Honoring Traditions. So our students have a sense of people come from different cultures and have different traditions, and they can have honest discussions and celebrate and enjoy each other's traditions. Sixth grade, Exploring Identity, goes right back to that board goal of self-identity and self-esteem and respecting others too. So the resources the teachers have now, their classroom libraries that each of them enjoy, as Natasha just presented, lots of books that support board goal 1. And that's the way it should work in a school district. The vision should be there, and the resources that the board approves should be there to support the vision and the goal. Likewise with Character Strong that Dr. Ferraro presented, those were resources that we adopted this month so that teachers were prepared moving into the year for those character studies that Dr. Ferraro just presented. And finally, for board goal 1, I would be remiss if I didn't say in May 2020 is when the board adopted the social justice resolution, which really then produced the activities that we engaged in on day 1 when teachers came back, and they engaged in societal racism circles and listening circles and pandemic circles and other things. But it goes back to, again, the good work and the vision this board had that supplies the resources, that drives the instruction that you're seeing evident now in the presentations tonight. Board goal 2, and I'll read, create structures within the school district and partner with agencies across the community to expand and deepen systems that advance early childhood education of all learners. When I put this out there, I was, I knew it, we, the board, knew that this resonated with the community, but I'm about to show you something that blew my socks off. I didn't know how much it resonated. Let me skip ahead actually a little bit. So about 2 weeks ago, I put out 2 letters to the community welcoming back to school to all the families, telling them a little bit about the mask practices and expectations of students walking into our school. But I also had a link in there to a survey for our 3 district goals. And what you see on the screen is a little bit of response that I got, 14 responses. And from our community, what they were interested in. This is parents and families in our community who just volunteered. You can see 77% of them were interested in the college and career. All students known included, 55%. And goal 2, early childhood learning, 44%. And if you dig a little deeper, as Dr. Ferraro read a quote, here's a quote from one of those surveys, from one of our parents. I'm going to read it because I really love this, and it shows the resonance that our families are having with these goals. Early childhood education is the building block of forming a successful relationship between our early learners and their academic learning path. It should be of top priority to offer to our 3 and 4-year-olds. They deserve the opportunity to learn and grow in an educational setting during their formative years. Our district will greatly benefit from providing full-day pre-K and pre-K4 programs for our young learners. Not only would this provide our children with the opportunity to start their academics at an early age, but it will also strengthen their social and emotional growth. That to me spoke volumes about how much our community supports these goals and that they're ready to move forward with us as we engage in, for example, a feasibility study for universal pre-K. And this board votes to put resources behind that so that we can move forward with figuring out how are we going to provide our village with universal pre-K. And the 3rd goal, expand multiple pathways for all students to prepare for college and career options. And we've already started those career and technical education programs, those CTE programs. Some examples are down here. As a proud community, we graduated 8 students with associate's degrees, and we're looking forward to expanding those programs and opportunities forward. I'd continue then with, some of the other PD that supported these board goals, as Dr. Ferraro mentioned. This was one of our teachers. Dr. Ferraro, we didn't use the same quote, so I'm pretty happy. This one came from another teacher. I'll let you read this one. If you could actually, the audience in the room can't read it. I'll have to read it. I just wanted to say that this PD may have been one of the best I've seen in my 11 first days of my 12 years here. It was timely, it was useful, and the person-centered approach made staff feel valued enough to get the need and see the use. A++. That's from one of our teachers who engaged in the listening circle, modeled it for adults, had our adults participate in peer listening circles so they could take that back to the classroom and start listening circles. There were tons of other quotes. I put some up on the screen here, and I'll go ahead and present those on the website. And speaking of the website, as I move away from the board goals, which the board will adopt tonight, as far as questions and answers, which we move into that, and Mary O'Neill will be reading a statement in a few minutes. We have a website for board questions and answers. It's found at our district website. You can see the link there. There's another link that I've highlighted for the Board of Education retreat that was filmed on 8/14. A couple of people I know have already clicked on that and watched the entire board retreat. And before I move into the website, I just wanted to say, we had a bunch of 95% celebrations, which I'm pretty thrilled about. 95% of our staff, it was more than that, close to 100, joined us in attendance for the first days of school. 95% of our students in all 4 buildings rejoined our learning community for in-person learning. That's pretty tremendous. 95% of the Ridgefield Park faculty gave the opening PD a 95%. 95% of our transportation routes were working when we reopened school. You've already heard the good work of Mr. Daglitz and Mrs. Kelly. the elementary principals, the other administrators. I think we have a lot to be proud of in the village of Ridgefield Park for our 95% club and how we reopened our schools smoothly and successfully. So I think you all deserve a round of applause. And before you do that, let me go out and demonstrate. So for those of you who are asking questions at board meetings, one of the options you now have, skip over here, is clicking on the district, going down to BOE questions and answers. We are building this site, but the major questions that people had last board meeting were about the pandemic, about masking, about reintroducing students to school. What are the quarantine regulations and guidelines? How are we reinforcing that? Nurse Aaron spoke a little bit about that, but as you scroll down here, you'll find a link to the questions for COVID questions and answers. And this is a pretty robust site that answers all of the questions that people asked about COVID at the last meeting. It includes the communications that I sent out to the district. There were 2 of those. So I sent one out on August 23rd. New Jersey Department of Education frequently answered. Please start, if you want to explore this page, really start with those, because those are the basics of what our state government requires us to follow as far as procedures and processes for COVID. And then it moves on down to our own local health and safety, where we use the HARP from Hackensack guidelines, and it answers all of the questions about if a student needs to be quarantined during the school day, are they allowed to come back into our classrooms and observe learning? It answers if I travel to Colorado and come back, if I'm unvaccinated, do I have to quarantine? If I'm vaccinated, do I have to quarantine? All of those questions and answers are thoroughly answered on this website. I'll go back a second then to the other part of the question and answer. So here's the 8/25/21 questions. These were the most frequently asked questions from the 8/25 board meeting. There were some other ones here, and we will be adding to this, but those were the most frequently asked. And I'll go back to, I've already started the page for the 9/15, which we will start it in the near future. That is the superintendent report.
Thank you for having our students and staff back and forming an outlet for our parents to better communicate as well. Thank you. Mary, were you going to be before or after? Okay. Mr. Demikoff, the monitor's report.
Okay. A state monitor was appointed on May 12, 2016 to provide district oversight of the Board of Education's business operations and personnel matters. As stated in Title 18A, and I quote, "The state monitor shall oversee the fiscal management and expenditures of the school district funds, including but not limited to budget reallocations and reductions, approvals of purchase orders, budget transfers, and payment of bills and claims. In summary, the state monitor has the final approval authority." There was great resistance from the beginning since this was a change in the way business was done in the district. There would be no longer sweetheart deals. Districts would now be expected to pay their fair share to educate their students, and violations in the law and statutes would not be acceptable. When the state audit of the district was completed, the report documented $1.7 million of lost revenue for the district by contract and administrative mismanagement. As we moved forward and changed administration, the cooperation and communication increased, and the results are apparent. The district recouped $3.6 million, $251,542, $534,701 through litigation, and another $1,042,725 is pending. These are all funds that the district would not have with the pre-deficit administration and was in place prior to the appointment of a state monitor. These funds, along with good, sound budgeting, have provided curriculum improvements, educational advancements for students, and improved facilities that enhance the learning environment. Communication and cooperation at the local level were significant factors in the progress that was made and are needed to continue moving this district forward educationally, financially, and structurally in the improvement of facilities. Great progress was made due in great part to the communication and cooperation at the local level until recently. That has changed. I have witnessed an absence of communication and cooperation at the local level. The state monitor is no longer copied on many board and administrative emails, does not receive timely responses requested in emails, and continues to be given a low priority with little or no respect for the position or the person. This jeopardizes the forward movement of the district and could possibly negate the progress that has been made. It is unfortunate that this forward progress is in jeopardy with the present change in direction. There is no longer a chain of command used in the district. No longer is there communication with the right people who are responsible for a function. There is a definite communication and cooperation division between the education and financial functions of the district. What satisfaction is gained by defying the state monitor and refusing to cooperate? One person decides who should know what, just like in the past administrations that were responsible for the deficit. It is quite evident that there are those on the board and in administration who want to go back to the past, but they have a problem. That problem is the state monitor. So what do they do? That should be an easy one to answer if doing what is best for the students and residents of Ridgefield Park is their objectives. Start communicating, cooperating, and working with the state monitor, and put your personal agendas aside. That is how you, quote, get rid of the state monitor. The choice is yours. We are going to do it. Are we going to do it together? Your actions or lack of actions will give us your answer. The purchase of student Chromebooks continues to be a source of board emails and discussions since the last board meeting, when the state monitor overturned the board's vote to table the post-approval of the Chromebooks. Many will say that it is their fiduciary responsibility as board members to question this purchase. One of the questions asked was, how can you ask the Board of Education to post-approve something that was already purchased? The board by resolution each year gives the authorization to hire and pay bills during the months of July and August, with the board's post-approval at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. This is nothing new. And there are times when it is necessary to hire teachers, pay vendors, or provide equipment for students and teachers for the start of the school in September. I found it interesting that I would receive an email from the acting superintendent this past Saturday morning that stated how much experience he had in technology in many districts. I could only wonder why he was sending this to me on a Saturday morning before a board meeting. Was he saying he knew more about IT than the state monitor and was also a sitting board member to impress the board who he copied? Or was this going to be a topic of discussion tonight, and someone will say that the state monitor authorized spending more funds than someone with over 20 years of experience in the area of technology would not recommend? However, it is quite possible that the state monitor has much more experience as a board member than the acting superintendent, and more IT experience in one place, not multiple districts as well. I have found that many times insecure people sometimes need to tell you how good they are instead of showing that through their actions. The statement was made that, and I quote, "Facts need to be deliberated before we purchase a new costlier fleet to maintain, especially given the expectation that we will have other increased district expenses, including legal fees, in a somewhat near future," end of quote. Increased unbudgeted legal fees caused by the actions taken by the board should never, I repeat, never be a reason to provide students with less, especially when the statement was made that nothing would be cut in the 2021-2022 budget with the payment of the additional $500,000 to the state for the tax-free loan incurred by the district. To purchase the same costly Chromebooks that had a history of complaints such as slow performance, CPU errors, Zoom issues, power-related issues, shutting down unexpectedly, not turning on, not charging, broken screens, etc., would be wrong. To purchase the same Chromebooks that had that history would not be in the best interest of our students, especially when the better computers with more RAM, more storage, better warranty, larger screen, better resolution, and a more durable aluminum case instead of plastic could be purchased and was within the budget approved by the board. When the district went into deficit and a state monitor was assigned to the district on May 12, 2016, the district lost local control of their final approval process, and it was transferred to the state monitor. Therefore, with the authority given to the state monitor in Title 18A to approve purchase orders and working under difficult time constraints to have these Chromebooks in the hands of students for the beginning of the school year, the state monitor approved their purchase. This was the right thing for the students of Ridgefield Park, and this should be the end of this discussion. The students have the new Chromebooks with more capabilities for the start of the school year in spite of the unnecessary delays that could have and should have been avoided. Moving on, I told the public that I would report the legal costs associated with the Dr. Bender litigation at each board meeting. The updated figures included the May and June estimates and excluded August, which hasn't been received yet. That total is $13,520.11. You should also be aware that the documented legal costs do not include the time spent by staff compiling documents that are requested that related to the litigation, which continues to increase and is not documented. Time is money, but it is difficult to get an exact figure to report on that. No further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Demikoff. And again, just to state, the majority of the board or Dr. Haynes neither Dr. Haynes or the majority of the Board of Education recommend, support, or endorse the approval of the purchase of these Chromebooks. Mary, would you like to read your statement?
Good evening. Before we begin public comment, as the chair of the policy committee, I wanted to update the public on a new policy that the committee has been working on and is introducing tonight. We realized that meetings were lasting a very long time and many people were still not getting their questions answered. Out of respect to our community, staff and board members, we discussed how we could make our meetings more effective and how we could make sure everyone's questions would be answered as soon as possible. Our goal in passing this policy is to encourage the greatest amount of participation from our community. Over the last few months, the committee has worked with our administration and attorney to create a policy that allows our meetings to be well-run, last a reasonable amount of time, and provide the public with a fair opportunity to speak. Excuse me. Before I outline the proposed revisions, our administration asked that I remind you that the public comment period is not the only way to provide input to the board or its administration. Though we are absolutely not saying questions and input are not welcome at meetings, we want to make sure everyone gets a fair chance to share input and have their questions answered. We encourage you to email Dr. Haynes or the appropriate member of our administration with any questions or comments you have. Dr. Haynes has assured the board that the administration will share your comment with the board or answer your question to the best of its ability. Answers will also can also be posted on the new public website. In many cases, it will be far more productive to email the district's administration with your question so they have time to look into your issue, but rather than only raising it during the public comment period. As for the key points related to the proposed new policy, number one, we will continue to have 2 public comment periods, one for agenda items and one for non-agenda items. 2, to keep the public comment period organized and running efficiently, we will be using a sign-in sheet. We have one today. For those interested in speaking, please place your name on the sheet to speak. The sign-in sheet will be located at the back of the room and will be collected just prior to each of the public comment periods. We will make an announcement prior to the sign-in sheet being collected as a reminder to those who wish to speak. When we call out your name, please come to the podium. At this time, the board also plans to allow members of the public to participate on Zoom during this school year. For those on Zoom who would like to make a comment, please use the hand-raising feature just before the public comment period if you would like to speak. A member of the district's administration will keep track of those who wish to speak, and the board will dedicate a set period of time to allow virtual attendees to make their comments during each public comment period.
Thank you, Trustee O'Neill.
3, each member of the public will have up to 5 minutes to speak during each public comment period. During your 5 minutes, you may present on one or more topics. However, you only may speak once during each comment period, and you cannot cede or transfer your time to another individual. This is a part of our current policy. This means that individuals who sign up to speak on both agenda and non-agenda items will be given up to 5 minutes to speak during each period for a total of up to 10 minutes. However, I want to remind everyone that while you have up to 5 minutes per comment period, you do not have to use the full length of your time. Number 4, finally, the public comment period for agenda items will be limited to 1 hour. Similarly, the public comment period for non-agenda items will be limited to 1 hour. We are confident that 1 hour period provides ample opportunity for comments while also ensuring our meetings run in a timely and productive fashion. As I mentioned, the policy committee has been working hard on putting together this policy. We're proud of what we feel balances providing the public with fair opportunity to be heard while encouraging the greatest amount of participation from our community. A copy of the proposed policy can be found on the district's website. Thank you so much for your support and cooperation.
Thank you, Trustee O'Neill. And I'd like to reiterate, we have the list, I believe, at the podium. If you would like to speak, please put your name on the list, and that will be the order in which you'll speak tonight. Thank you. And thank you to the policy committee for composing this. Thank you. I'll give you a moment to sign the.
Ms. Thiemann, are
sheet.
there a couple of names on the list already? Go ahead and bring those too. Okay.
In a moment, we'll start with citizens' comments on agenda items once we get the list. Chris, do you need the sheet? Yes. Sure, if you don't mind. Thank you. Janet Malou. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't really know where to start at this point, but I'm going to start in order that I happen to grab my papers. The goals, district goals. I am for number 3, totally in favor of what you're looking at. However, my concern is, are we putting too much emphasis on acceleration of students? What about the child, and I've had many of them through the years, that wish to become a plumber or an electrician? Do we have anything in place that makes them feel comfortable with that choice? I've had kids come through my accelerated classroom miserable. Well, their parents wanted them to become doctors. Well, what do you want to be? I want to go into fashion design. What are we doing for those children? We have to make sure we address that and don't make a child that isn't interested in taking an accelerated math or history course or whatever feel like they are failures. And that's the problem that I see in a lot of districts. And that's my concern. Okay, so that's one thing I hope we do address. Where's this other one here? Okay, that I can leave. Okay, I noticed that there's a supervisory position, I guess, being opened or whatever, business, visual, and performing arts, K-12. Is that a new position? Or it's reiteration of, okay, utilizing qualitative and quantitative survey data to suggest remedial programs to forecast future needs. I hope this is being done, not like I was told a few years ago when I asked if I could take a copy of one of the students I was working with as a tutor, is the questions he had wrong, so I could go over it with him. I wasn't allowed to do it because God forbid we should let out an answer or a test question to another professional. And I was told that, oh, well, we use it for data analysis. I said, great. When can I get a copy of that analysis of his work? And the answer was, well, we don't do it till June. Well, what good is June when it's September or October? So I hope that's not what we're indicating. Also, remediation programs. I know a few years back, to prep a lot of students for the state exams, it was done, I think, on a Wednesday afternoon. They had to stay late for that. After teaching for many years in Rockland County, we have New York State Regents exams and state exams, and we never did that. You mold your curriculum so that children can be successful on those tests. And if you're doing remediation, you don't make it obvious. If a kid is slow or having difficulty in a subject, and you now tell them they got to take 2 of these courses, what do you think that's going to feel like? Okay, so I'm hoping that's not what is intended by this, but just remediating within the realm of the classroom. And this one kind of really got me. Oversee the departments daily to ensure staff members are completing mandated responsibilities and meeting all department, building, and district deadlines. Do you hire professionals? Because to me, this is saying you're not treating them as a professional that knows what they are responsible to do on a daily basis. I know if this had happened while I was teaching, I would be the first one screaming and the first one to really say, hey, if you hired me and you've kept me, then you trust my judgment as an educator and not micromanage me, because this is what it sounds like. I'll let it go with that. This new method of being able to ask online has its pros and cons. The thing that bothers me with that is if I can just type all my questions on and hopefully get a response, then why bother meeting in person? you lose that person to person, people to people feel. It's like putting the kids on the computers. It didn't work, did it? Not to the same level that it would work having them in a classroom and having personal interactions. So I have some concerns about that. It was said to, I believe in the statement that was just read, I don't know if I wrote it down exactly, but to putting it there, I guess you can contact an administrator. Mr. Haynes, Dr. Haynes, I'm sorry. I've emailed the rest of the people that were on that list have responded to me. I'm still waiting to hear a response from you. Okay, if that's the way, I will be honest, I am used to being, when I would reach out to Mr. Koenig, or I would reach out to Dr. Bender, within a day or so, I've got a response. How can I help you? What can we do? How can we work together? If you're going to be here for the year or however long, I really hope that that's something you realize I'm going to be demanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronald Hidalgo.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I have a question about P75.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the number?
I have a question about P75, the extra compensation. I see that it's 96 cents. It's nothing for 20 minutes. But I don't see a name placed on this recommendation. Are we supposed to have a name?
Are you referring to technology overtime?
No, extra compensation, P75,
Pizza.
personnel.
Yes. For the Chris Abrams and Lesser to.
So I will go to the board recent discussions. This is for 2 staff members. They are rotating staff members to help out at the arrival of the middle school door in the morning because there's not enough coverage there. And we're looking to help rather than having students clump up and come together at the front doors. We're trying to increase social distancing. So we have a couple of people manning the doors so they don't clump up and they have social distancing.
Who are those 2 people? They don't have, do they have a name?
Those 2 people are rotating. They will change. I will go ahead and provide a list of names for you, because that is a great question.
This is on the agenda. It's voted on. And we're voting on something that we don't know. I mean, you guys are voting on
They
something. that we
are
don't
they
know.
are 2 staff members, and this was discussed in need for social distancing and organization purposes.
Okay, all right. Let's pass on that. I want to go back to the email thing. What about if I am here on the board meeting and I want to ask a question after the fact, after you guys picked up that list? What should I do? Keep it to myself and don't ask the question?
You have several opportunities, either at the board meeting or you could ask a question online. This just furthers the ability for people in the community to communicate with administration.
But after you picked up the list, if I want to ask a question, I can't ask anymore.
Sorry.
If you pick up the list from here and you take it over there to ask the people to come forward and ask the questions, if I have a question after the fact that you picked up the list, what should I do? Keep it to myself?
Yeah, then you could ask the question online if you later thought of something.
I
that
want to
came
say,
up.
I want to say something. Okay. I asked a few questions here 2 meetings ago, and I gave my personal email to Dr. Haynes. I'm still waiting for the answers.
Thank you. This is legible. That's DeSantis. Good evening.
What Ron means is you took the book and nobody else can write that they want to talk on agenda because you took the book. There's no paper here.
If anybody else would like to, that's why I gave an opportunity at the beginning for anybody to get on the list. The book is right here. Anyone in the public is welcome to add themselves on agenda list.
Well, there are people that wanted to sign it, but you took the book. Okay.
Okay, if anybody else would like to sign the book, it's right here. I will write down the last name. Thank you very much. This is the first time that we did this for organization purposes. Thank you.
FI 83, we're spending 25, well, it's costing $25,000 for $914 worth of roof repairs. FI 92. Why are we paying parents to transport children instead of the buses that we have? P58. Why didn't we know about this before? Why is this an after the fact? P64 and 65. Are these people related to anybody in the district?
You said 64 and 65, ma'am?
Right. P65, why is Corinne Perone being replaced when she teaches 2 classes? You have extra compensation for lunch for the grammar schools. Why don't you have it for the high school? And this 90 cents, 96 cents a minute. Why isn't the ability for the somebody to just cover this?
Can you repeat that last comment, ma'am?
This 96 cents a minute to cover what is it? For 20 minutes arrival coverage at the high school at 96 cents a minute, which is ridiculous to begin with, but why can't this be covered by somebody that comes early or the principal and vice principal of the school? Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Sadler? Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the administrators for their continued focus on social justice and on the social emotional wellness of our children. I think that that's a very, very important focus for us to maintain. So I'd like to just acknowledge that. Thank you for that. I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Bender, who last year spearheaded, that effort, as well as the few board members who supported it. Thank you so much. You know who you are. I appreciate you. I'd also like to thank Dr. Haynes. I think it's actually, I don't want to have the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I do think that it's a good thing to have another venue within which we can have our questions answered on the website. But I do agree also with Ms. Malou, who gave the statement earlier. It is important as well that we maintain that interpersonal contact, the direct contact between administrators, the board as well, and members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Yes, I was going to state that. We're moving on to citizens' comments online. And if we have any hands raised, and also anybody online that's having any trouble hearing, we've tried to fix that issue. Please let us know in the comment section as well. Thank you. Thank you. So who do we have?
Chris, President Gibbons,
Yes.
would it be okay before, while you're pulling some up, if I say something?
Yes, I wasn't sure if it's
Okay.
coming on the, yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead. With the
No,
mask,
I just think
of
maybe we should, in our next policy meeting, maybe we should, my personal opinion, not representing the whole board, that I think maybe we should leave the book out. And then someone could just call them. And maybe we should discuss that further, some of the things that they said tonight actually were good
Yes,
ideas.
I'm sorry.
No.
And actually, I think we solved the problem, which we didn't even realize. We could just take the sheet and we have a copy of the other sheet sitting there. So we could absolutely discuss that, but I think we should just tear off the sheet and then we'll keep the book out there in the future if that works for everyone.
Okay.
You know, but we absolutely discuss.
Thank you.
I think it was a good idea for organization purposes. If we could promote the one speaker.
We're waiting for her to unmute.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Rafferty, please speak.
Yes, Ingrid Raftery, 54 Euclid Avenue. Now, I've been listening very patiently, and I hear people asking questions, but what I do not hear is answers, and I believe we need some transparency. It does not work asking a question and then being told, oh, email it to me and wait. I personally believe and in order to be transparent, they should be answered as soon as possible, especially at a board meeting that's open. It's not helpful to say, email me and then wait. The public also should hear the answers, not through just emails. So I really would appreciate that the board has the courtesy tonight to answer questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Also, a shout out for Mr. Demikoff for getting the books, the Chromebooks. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to promote the next speaker. Right now, this is on agenda. If you'd like to go up while we're doing on agenda items, you can sign the book for off agenda items as well, so that we can go on order just as we are now. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, hi, good evening. Suheni Perez Sadler, 139 Overpeck.
Good evening.
Good evening. I would like to also thank start off by thanking the principals for a great presentation. Just looking at the titles of the books and seeing how culturally responsive they are, talking about the social emotional needs of our students. I think it's a great way to start the meetings, you know, being student-centered and really focusing on the education of our students and learning more about what's happening in our classrooms. My children just started 7th grade, so I'm really excited to back to school night and even hearing at future board meetings, just other things happening at the junior and senior high school, because again, just thinking and talking more about what's happening in the classroom is definitely what should be centered at these meetings. Dr. Haynes, thanks again for the FAQs. There are a lot of questions that are generated in these meetings. So to know that there is a hub, a one-stop shop, where we can go to as community members to see the responses to our answers I think it's a great idea, especially those that when we ask a question where there might not be an immediate answer. But I echo the concerns of my fellow community members to say, if you know the answer today, why do we have to wait for it in the future? So whatever you're able to answer, you should be transparent and be able to respond to us, especially when we take the time from, our busy lives, right? We're all volunteering our time as well as parents because we care about what's happening in our schools. And so when we have a question, it's only fair for you to answer if you already know that, right? The last thing I also want to shout out is our state monitor, Mr. Demikoff. Thank you so much for your transparency and for constantly just reminding us of what your role and responsibilities are and why you're here. There's been a lot said about the Chromebooks. And actually, I have two very important members of our school community, which is both of my children, who want to thank Mr. Demikoff for the Chromebooks and explain how this has been beneficial to them so far and how they think they'll benefit in terms of instructions. So here is Jocelyn Sadler, 7th grader.
Hello. I wanted to say that I'm very happy that we got the new Chromebooks this year. The old Chromebooks, I don't know how long we've had them for, but I feel like I've been using them since at least 5th grade, so at least more than 2 years. And these new Chromebooks, it makes it easier for me, especially during math class, because I take a lot of writing space, and these new Chromebooks, I don't know if you know, but they're touchscreen and they can be folded backwards into like tablets. So it gives us more space and it's just much more convenient for me and for other kids that may not know how to type.
And Malik Sadler also has a comment.
I would also like to thank Mr. Demikoff for the new computers because it really helps me out when I'm writing something. The old ones used to lag a lot. It just wasn't the most convenient thing. And now these new ones are just faster, just easier to work with in general. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mrs. Sadler.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good night.
Do we happen to have any comments? So we're gonna move into resolutions.
Can I speak on agenda?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. You wrote on that list.
I'm sorry.
Do we have any more on that list besides Mr. Raftery? Go ahead, Mr. Raftery. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm going to start by thanking Mr. Demikoff for purchasing the Chromebooks for the students. On the first day of school, I picked up my granddaughter, who is a freshman, and all of the students were coming up the stairs on Union Avenue with the new Chromebooks and a lot of smiles. So thank you, Mr. Demikoff. As far as the structure of the meeting, the citizens of Ridgefield Park will not be silenced. The structure that has been written is to the benefit of the Board of Education, so they are not accountable to the people. Because you don't have to answer the questions. I don't see anything in the new structure you have that benefits the people. What benefits the people? The people aren't going to get answers to their questions. You can't be transparent with us. And if a question comes up while we're talking, how can people speak? We're not robots. We're looking for human interaction, an answer to our question. I stated 100 times, we're not the enemy, but we do need accountability and answers to our questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And to state again, we brought in the opportunity to speak, and also a committee of board members goes through this process. Thank you. If we don't have any other.
President Gibbons, can I say one more thing, please?
Yes.
In our meeting, we had discussed that, in our policy meeting, that the public would be able to get answers if it's something that we could answer immediately. So it was only things that couldn't be answered immediately or things that we answered, but we also wanted other people to be able to get the answer for that would be put on the website to make that clear. So answers can still be given at this meeting. People can still ask and get the answers.
Thank you, trustee O'Neill. And that's so, if we can answer the questions, we will. Oh, we have a virtual question as well. If you could please state your name and address.
Progress.
Can you please repeat that?
Hi, Jimmy Coloma, 145 Poplar.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? So
Very well.
again, I just want to reiterate what the town is trying to communicate to the board. This new policy, I think piggybacking off of what Mr. Rafferty said, the board is trying to silence the community, or I don't understand what the benefit of holding off questions is. We ask questions, we say, or the board says, if you can answer them, you will. However, there's not one question answered. That doesn't give a lot of confidence to the town that the board understands kind of where we're at, right? I mean, some questions, of course, will take some time to research, but some of the questions that are being asked about policy, about agenda items, about costs, why are we approving this? Why is we paying overtime for that? I mean, those things I would think you should know. And I don't understand the 1 hour limit, right? If we give people 5 minutes to talk, that's only 12 people that are allowed to ask a question. And I'm not there today in person, but I have to imagine there are a lot more than 12 people there. If the board was more transparent and worked with the community, I think there'd be a lot less questions, right? No one wants to be here till 12 o'clock. I just don't get it. And policy, so are the questions that were asked going to be posted, even though they weren't emailed in? Is someone documenting them and going to post them with answers? And how long are we going to log answers for, questions and answers for?
Yes. And also, if you go back to the board minutes of today, we did answer several questions that we were able to answer, and it will continue that way. From what trustee O'Neill said, if we're able to answer questions, we will. If we can't, we'll do our best to get back to you. And we also have that email forum as a secondary place where you can have questions answered. It actually expands, I believe, how the community can communicate with us.
Yeah, but again, it's several questions, right? It's very selective. Same thing happened in the last meeting. Who was taking notes? Everybody was taking notes, but there was about 90 questions asked and maybe like 4 answered. There just has to be better communication. I mean, you know, again, no one's trying to pick on anyone, or the
Mr. Colonna.
community is just frustrated with the lack of communication and transparency.
Mr. Colonna, so you are correct. Many of those questions in the last meeting had to do with students returning to school, about masking, about quarantining, about vaccinations, and all of those answers were then gathered and put up on the rather extensive website about the pandemic and all of the answers that we have that went into it too. A couple of people asked me very lengthy emails, and you will find those answers also posted on the website. I'm looking at the questions that Mrs. DeSantis asked. She had a lot of questions on resolution item numbers that I took down, and I will post those back on the website. And Mrs. Malul is right. She sent a chain of emails around that I lurked on and looked at all the great answers all the other administrators gave, and I wasn't going to participate because they were giving good answers. However, I do want to entertain it into a conversation with you. So we are looking at these questions and answers. And as Mrs. O'Neill just said, if it can be answered at the point where it's at, either the president of this board will answer them, or I'll jump in like I am now, or we will post them on the website.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Hopefully there's some progress going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to make a comment because I'm on the policy committee. And so first of all, I want to assure the public that, I was okay with these changes to the policy. In particular, with the interest of making these meetings go a little smoother. And I was kind of disappointed that a lot of people online, emailed me later that they never got even to ask their question because we went on and on and on. I'm also cognizant of the fact that many of the people that sign on have little kids on their laps, and out of respect for them, I think they need to get answers and they need to be able to get their questions in before it's 12 o'clock. If some of us want to stay here till 12, I'll stay here. It's not a problem, but I know that a lot of the public, and I also know there's a bunch of teachers who sign on and a bunch of, administrators who sign on who also out of respect for them should be able to go to bed at a decent time before educating our kids. I think this community is pretty fired up. I think if this leads to the community feeling stifled and feeling like you're not getting your questions in, I think you guys are going to protest, and I will be right there with you because I've been one of the biggest advocates of more people coming to these meetings and people being able to ask questions. So I don't think that that'll be a problem. We can always revisit it if it does become a problem. The other thing I'd like to say is that I think in terms of the tone of discourse here, I'm all for a good, I'm all for, sometimes the public has to get their torches and their tiki torches and come out, and that's the public being engaged. But there are a lot of people who have just simple questions, and I think we as a board need to really take a breath and answer as many questions as we can as they come up. Sometimes they can just be batted away very simply. Sometimes people have been frustrated with the chain of command, or sometimes stuff comes up that people need to ask. So I think, hold us accountable. We'll hold each other accountable. I don't think that the changes that we're making to the policy right now are going to lead to the public being stifled, but you guys will be the judge of that.
President Gibbons, can
Thank
I
you,
add
Dr.
one more thing?
Martinez. Yes.
I also wanted to, Dr. Haynes had said it before, but the goal was that if you send the email before 48 hours before the meeting, then he can prepare certain answers in his superintendent report that might answer it up front, so that he'll have the answers to all the questions ahead of time.
So Mayor, I'm going to add to that because I made a slight change since we did talk about that as a committee. I want to share my screen out for a second. Thank you. I made a slight change that will make it easier. So emails do not get buried. Right on the question and answer, there is a form. So if you want to go to click on the form, as Mrs. O'Neill just said, if you can click on this, type in your name, address, your question, and that helps go to a form that I will see much more readily than an email. So I would encourage the public to go ahead and click on that and use the form to ask new Board of Education questions. I sit on a board too, and in that board, the superintendent reminds people that they'll get answers. If you submit it 48 hours prior to a board meeting, then you will have it. And as Mrs. O'Neill just said, it could be addressed in the superintendent reports. And I think that's a great way moving forward. That gives us interaction, but it also allows us to prepare a question and an answer time for you that can engage hopefully in a deeper discussion.
I'll also add two things. One is that if you don't get your answer from the administration, I welcome all emails that have followed the chain of command. It should get to the board level if administration is not answering your questions. And I'd also like to say that one of my concerns with having the hour limit was that there are some hot topics that may come up that will bring out more of the public and that we need to have more time. And I think that under those circumstances, the board still reserves the right to take a vote, live vote, to extend that hour as long as it needs to go. And you can hold us accountable for whichever way we vote there. So, I don't anticipate that this will be a problem in terms of people getting their voice out, but I'm on the side of more people being here. So, and I know many of us are.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions online by any chance, or this concludes?
No questions.
Stop share maybe. Thank you. We're going to move on to resolutions, but just to reiterate, if you want to see some of the great things that we do at Ridgefield Park and in the schools, please follow us on Twitter. We have a great Twitter page with pictures of all the great things that are going on in the schools. Thank you. We're gonna move on to the resolutions. Faculty and programs, trustee Rodriguez.
I so move FP 24 through FP 34.
I second it.
Seconded by trustee Cathcart. Thank you.
Any comments or questions regarding FP 24? I'm sorry, what was the last number?
34.
30.
New business? Are we moving both? I so move FP 24 through FP 28.
I still second it.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments regarding FP 24 to FP 28? Seeing none. Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Thiemann,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
motion passed. 9 out of 10. Oh, I'm sorry, President Gibbons.
Yes. It's okay. Thank you. Buildings and grounds, we have
BG 7.
Second.
Any questions or comments regarding BG 7? Seeing none. Mr. Cathcart,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Thiemann, President Gibbons,
yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Finance, FI, I will move finance. Or actually, trustee Gomes, would you mind moving finance?
I so move FI 70.
To 92.
93 is new business, right?
Thank you. Seconded by,
I'm sorry, who seconded?
second,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Any questions or comments regarding FI 70 through 92? Yes. I do not know the answer at this time. We'll get back to you.
I'm sorry, what was your question, Mr. Thiemann? Trustee Thiemann, I apologize. Well, that's a very good question. As discussed at the Faculty and Program Committee, the new Chromebooks were provided to 5th through 12th graders, correct? Dr. Haynes?
I believe so.
Okay. What happens to the students that are in the elementary schools who've had their Chromebooks for over 2 years? You know, and there are students that did receive the Chromebooks that received new Chromebooks from last year. So that was a very good question, Trustee
And again,
Thiemann.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's hard to, with the mask. Neither Dr. Haynes or the majority of the Board of Education recommend, support, or endorse the approved purchase of these Chromebooks.
I'm not questioning that. I'm just questioning, I'm just following up
The
to what
question was
trustee.
about the old Chromebooks, so
So what happens to the Chromebooks?
we,
That's a question I'll have
Yeah,
to ask.
we don't have the
Director
answer.
of Technology and get back to you.
I agree. And there are children at the elementary level, even pre-K, and you'll be surprised, a lot of pre-K students that are able to use technology, pre-K through 4, and I feel like we're neglecting them.
Well, if I might, have we collected the old ones and redistributed them, or do the students still have them?
Still have them.
Well, Simone's sitting there. Why don't we ask?
To my knowledge, we have not collected the Chromebooks that are out there. Every student in grades 5 through 12 currently has 2 Chromebooks.
If we don't have answers to this
Any other
questions at this
questions?
time, we're
We
gonna
do
move
not.
on with the,
Any other questions regarding, comments and questions regarding FI 70 through 92? Seeing none, Mr. Gomes,
yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Thiemann.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Cathcart,
Yes, but I'll be an abstention on FI 73.
thank you. President Gibbons,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. CR. Consent
The
agenda.
consent agenda,
It's only one, CR 5.
second,
Any questions and comments regarding CR 5? Seeing none, Mr. Thiemann, Mr. Cathcart.
yes.
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes.
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
President Gibbons. Motion passed.
All right, personnel, trustee Teeman.
Second,
Any questions and comments regarding P57 to P75? Seeing none, Mr. Thiemann, Mr. Cathcart.
yes.
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
President Gibbons.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We can move on to new business. Trustee Rodriguez, if you could please move FP 29 to 34.
I so move FP 29 through FP 34.
Thank you. Second. Second by trustee Teeman.
Any questions or comments regarding FP 29 to FP 34? Seeing none, Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Thiemann, Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes,
President Gibbons.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Trustee Gomes, could you please move on new business FI 93?
So FY 93.
I second it.
Any questions or comments regarding FI 93? Seeing none. Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes,
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Thiemann, Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
President Gibbons.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Trustee Teeman, if you could please move new business.
Seconded by Mr. Cathcart. Any questions or comments regarding P76 to P79? Seeing none, Mr. Thiemann,
yes.
Mr. Cathcart,
Yes,
Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Phytros,
Yes.
Mr. Gomes,
Yes.
Dr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Verselli,
Yes.
President Gibbons.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. That'll conclude our resolutions portion. We're going to move to citizens' comments, off agenda items, and we will go by the list that is provided. Can I please have Ms. DeMarco? And again, we have a blank sheet up there if anyone decides that they would like to speak as well. Good evening, ma'am.
I was really expecting that Mrs. Bender, Dr. Bender would be here. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Is it turned on?
Speak very closely to the mic.
Okay, I was expecting that maybe Dr. Bender would be here so that I could speak to her as well. Where are you? Hi, I'm Nancy DeMarco. I just want to ask you a few questions if I could. Okay, but just so that you know that I'm asking them. Was Dr. Bender filing a lawsuit prior to her appointment as superintendent? Does anybody know the answer to that? Was she blindsided by the so-called boys club? Or did she know that she was getting into something where she would be in charge? I'm asking how many lawsuits were filed since her appointment? How many were instituted by women against her? I too am waiting for an answer from you from June 24th of 2020, when I sent a letter to the Board of Education, to which you never answered. I'm talking about 2020. And you set a precedence on that date, saying that you said to me over Zoom that online petitions do not count as anyone can sign them. So that petition that's going around for you should be null and void, as you nullified the one for Mr. Rome. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Gottlieb?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so as I understand it,
And
whether the
I have
board,
your name and address. I will read them as they go.
Leslie Gottlieb, 464A Liberty Street, 102 Little Ferry.
I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, so whether the board approved or not, we are in possession of a large number of new laptops. Have the parents been offered any new, any insurance or the ability to get covers or provided covers, because accidents happen? You know, we may have spares, but a lot of parents would like to protect these laptops. You know, it's something that's on loan to them. They'd like it to come back intact.
I want to wait till you conclude your question and then I'll.
My question is insurance offered to the parents for the laptops, or are covers provided for the laptop?
Neither, Dr. Okay.
As I walked into this position, I understood that the district currently replaces all laptops. So the district has had in its practice for the past 5 years, is my understanding, that the district replaces everything. If a student has a cracked screen, or if it gets run over, or whatever happens to it, the current practice in the district is they replace it. Parents do not have insurance. That is the current practice.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Malou?
I know everybody else uses their phones. I can't see those things.
Good evening.
Nor can I type on them. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Pender for hiring. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I think you just have
Okay.
to speak close to the mask. It's
Yeah.
muffled. Sorry.
Hi, can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I like to thank Dr. Benda for hiring a caring, responsive group of new principals that from elementary through the middle school, through the high school. I actually reached out to them and as a group, including Dr. Haynes, in regards to what I felt was a misinterpretation or misunderstanding of the need for green team involvement, which basically what I was really asking was, I need a person to replace Mr. Koenig, and we would really like to have somebody, a representative from the schools. So that was one piece. I've gotten responses from several, and that makes me very happy. Also, as I explained in my email, and I'll say it here, the Green Team has a unique way of functioning. We invite people to meetings, and they can be a guest. And we allow our guests to interact with whatever conversation, whatever we're discussing. So it gives people a feel for what it's about. And it just, you know, instead of, okay, I'm going and I'm joining, and now I have no idea what I got myself in for. So that's one piece. Also want to say that they were very willing to help out. The Green Team is running a green fair in which we may be able to help certain families and very discreetly. I think we have a few that we may be able to do that. I won't even know who they are. So I thank them for really stepping up to the plate on that. One of the things that I want to say is that I truly believe, and I function this way, that I believe school districts and community groups such as Green Team, Arts Association, what other groups we have in this village. If we work together, we can accomplish a lot. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at from the Arts Association is, can we get a student to be an intern? We need somebody that's going to handle our website for us. You have plenty of students, I'm sure, that are really tech savvy. So why not give them the opportunity to have an internship and see what that's like before they go off to a field that they're interested in, or college or whatever. We're also, as many of you probably hopefully know, we have a student art exhibit right now running, and it's going to run a little longer than we thought, at the municipal building. We are investigating for the next one, which to me makes perfect sense, to ask current art teachers in the district and past art teachers in the district if they would like to display their work. It's nice to see what our kids are putting out, but it's really nice to see the people that inspired them, what they do, what they have done as we go on. So those are the positives. I just lost it, but that's okay. The traffic on the hill. I looked out my window the other day because I heard some noise, and I saw a car sitting in front of my house. I didn't pay any attention. Came back a few minutes later, car is still sitting there. I opened the front door and my mouth dropped. The line from the base here, and I don't know where it ended up at the circle, all the way up the hill, the upper end of Overpack, gridlock trying to get in, and it just was a standstill. And then you had a few cars come up, a few cars would go down, and then we started all over again. My real concern is what's going to happen. It's bad enough now, but in fact, it's the worst I think I've ever seen it. That the other day in the afternoon, I noticed the same thing. I sat outside in front of my house and I complimented the two children that actually walked up the hill, because I said it was refreshing to see kids walk up that hill. We haven't been seeing that in a long time. And I think that's something we really have to push. You have crossing guards. It's a safe neighborhood for high school and junior high school kids to walk home or something. I don't know. Something's got to happen. And I know we've had this problem for years, but the difference was years ago it was only 12, 9 through 12. Then when we brought 7 and 8, if those of you were on board many years ago, they were on a different schedule. I believe they started earlier, so you didn't have the same volume coming up and down at the same time. okay? So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'm really worried about what's going to happen when whatever this construction stuff is going to go on for the circle. I don't understand why it has to happen there. I really hope there's a traffic study before you do it, because if not, I will be one of the people, and you can be assured of this, that will be going to the police department to say something's got to give. And we have,
Thank you,
and
ma'am.
the other thing is they put the speed thing on the bottom of the hill. They really should be putting it at the top of the hill, because on off hours, if I go to cross the street, you're practically getting waffled by a car coming flying up. And I don't understand why there are people down here off hours. So that was my biggest concern. And lastly.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
I know.
We've
Time is
gone
up.
over a
Okay,
minute.
I
I don't
will
mean to be
write it
rude,
to
but we
you.
do have a number of
Yes, yeah,
people,
I
but
understand.
to answer, I
understand.
walk to school. There has been a police officer, and I know on that block every day of the week, but I reiterate what you said, that there should be a traffic study
Yeah.
to really look at that area as well. But thank
Thank
you
you.
for your comments, ma'am. Mrs. DeSantis? Good evening.
First of all, I'd like to say you make the agenda, and you shouldn't come prepared not to answer any questions on agenda. I asked eight questions tonight, and I didn't get an answer. I asked 3 last meeting and 4 the meeting before. No answers.
I think you'll find most of your questions, Mrs. DeSantis, are answered on the website tonight.
I can't hear you.
Answers to your questions are answered on the website tonight.
Which is ridiculous. It's nice that you read what you read, but that's not the way you change policy. You just don't read it and decide that's what it is going to be that day. Mr. Demikoff, has Little Ferry paid any money towards what they still owe, and have they signed those contracts?
Are you talking about the 1 million plus?
I'm talking about the $1,042,000.
Yes. We have gotten no response from Little Ferry on the memo that was sent to them the last week of June.
Have they signed the 2 contracts they were ordered by the court to sign?
Yes, they did.
Obviously, this whole thing with the Chromebooks is obviously an attempt to save money at the expense of the children, for either the litigation that you have with Dr. Bender, or to save more money to send the state monitor back. How much of the staff is vaccinated, and what percentage of the students are vaccinated?
I believe Nurse Aaron answered that a couple of meetings ago. We're pretty proud of the numbers in the village, in that students, at least 18 and above, are around 80%. And the numbers within school, although I can't obviously divulge information, we have had some exposures in the school. And when that happens and we call students for either having to quarantine or staying home, we find that at least half of them have been vaccinated. So I'm going to guesstimate more than half of our students are. Teachers, I'm not going to talk about.
Half the students are vaccinated, is what you're saying?
Approximately.
And what's the percentage of the staff?
I'd have to check that out and get back to you.
Okay. Yeah. And how many students and staff members are in quarantine right now, or have been since the beginning of school?
I need to check that answer to get back to you.
And how many athletes?
A lot of this is HERPA, we're not allowed to reveal, or, if we can, I'm sure Dr. Haynes will get back to you. It's medical information.
Mr. Demikoff, could you tell me what Mr. Koenig's last day in the district was?
I think he retired as of June 30th.
June 30th?
That was my understanding. I think the board passed a resolution. I think that was, he was gone at the end of June. That was my understanding.
Is there some reason why he was here till July 14th or 15th?
I can't answer that question. None that I know of.
Okay, is there some reason why in the high school, the students don't stay in their first period class for homeroom instead of moving them around the building and causing a possibility of more exposure?
I will get an answer from the high school administration on that one.
Okay, at the last meeting, I asked when the board knew about the asbestos, when was the public informed of the issue, and were there any staff members or students exposed to the asbestos? I'm asking that question again.
So I'm going to share the website because we spent a considerable amount of time in researching those answers and getting them back to you. So here's the website. And when I go to 825 questions, junior, senior high school, there are all the answers to when did the board know about the asbestos? Was the public informed of the issue? Were there any staff members? Your answers, we went to the architect and came back and he answered all of those questions for you. I'd invite you to look at the website to find all of the answers.
Is Mr. Ciora's $9,000 a month answered to?
Ma'am, I'll letting
No,
you
hold
know
on. I
that.
don't mind. Just got 36 seconds. Yes, actually, I spent a good amount of time telling you that there are many digital programs. Heck, you know what? It's going to take me about 3 minutes to explain, and I put at least 20 minutes into a thoughtful answer on the website for you. I'd invite you to read the website, and if after you have a question, come back to me for more clarification. But it's a great answer on the website.
When I looked yesterday, there weren't any answers on the website. And do we know why Mr. Kraljic was in 98 Central Avenue, 7:30 at several mornings?
Yeah, so I'm going to scroll down through the website because I spent a considerable amount of time, Mrs. DeSantis, answering these. Miscellaneous in reference to Mr. Kilmurray's class, Mr. Ciora. I'll go ahead and read this. Mr. Ciora's off-school hours is being paid by the CRISA grant for this summer and into the school year for every digital program that the school district purchases, such as, but not limited to, and we have at least 20 of them. Newsella, Gizmos, eSpark, iXL, Linkit, Pear Deck, Mystery Science, Studies Weekly. Mr. Ciora must create a unique username and login for each student, which is then set up in a class so that teachers have access to the student's digital work so they can check in on each student's progress. It takes a great deal of time to successfully set up all the student user profiles in time for school. However, Mr. Ciora did that. We do not believe that Mr. Ciora will submit timesheets for $18,000 over the summer. Rather, this money will be reserved to pay for his off-school hours work as we reopen school and he continues this work.
That's fine. I just wanted an explanation for such a large amount of money. That's all.
Thank you. We're going to have the next speaker because we don't want to take away time. from
President
everyone
Gibbons, can I give her one answer just about the policy, the new policy?
Yes.
Or the
Thank you,
revisions to
Mrs.
policy?
DeSantis.
I apologize if it wasn't clear when I had said it. One of the things I said was that these are proposed revisions. So today, it's not in effect. Today, we just added the sign-in sheet because after speaking with the lawyer, that was okay. But these are just proposed revisions, and then we have to read the new ones 2 times, the new policy 2 times before it becomes adopted.
Well, I'm also going to say one thing that many times, people come up here and they say something and somebody says something else and it brings another question. And to tell somebody that they can't come back up and ask another question is just ridiculous. It's just stifling the public again.
Well, I actually
Especially
circled.
now when you know that there is a tremendous amount of anger and hostility in this community that's going on over the board. I'm not saying you because you're not involved in that, and 2 other people.
Ma'am, thank
aren't
you for your
involved.
comments. We're going to, you know,
I
have a
had
chance for
circled
Mrs.
that
O'Neill
actually.
to answer. We don't want to
I
take time
can't-
away
I
from other
can't
people on
hear
the public.
Sorry, I apologize. I had circled it actually to leave that there. And then this way, if questions are emailed ahead of time, they answer it, then you'll be able to come up and talk in response to what they responded so that you'll be able to further it after you hear what other people
Well,
said.
this
That's
is-
why I mentioned before, I would like to, if possible, leave the sign-in sheet there.
Well, this is.
Thank you.
this
I'd
is
like to please
something-
call Ronald Hidalgo to the microphone.
This is something that the community.
Excuse me, but you're taking time away
specifically
from
be
other
allowed-
audience members who want to
should
speak. As we're having a
specifically-
hard stop, we'd like to respectfully
You know, I know you
of
like
others
playing
and
this
also giving them a
game,
chance to
but it's
speak.
just not gonna work. This is something
Ma'am,
that
you've gone over 3 minutes
I
on
understand
top of
that,
the
and
5
I'm
minutes,
going
so
to
we have
finish
to have
my
the next person
statement.
speak.
This is something that the community
I'm
really
gonna move
needs to
for a short
discuss.
recess, everyone. Can we second that? Thank you.
That really was dumb. That really was dumb. Well, I guess I'll finish my statement to the rest of you that are here and listening. This is a
There's no
subject,
cursing, by the way. You will
this
be
is a subject that the
totally
community really needs
Ma'am,
to have
The next
input
speaker
to.
is
I thought you were
Ronald
on break.
Hidalgo.
Thought
You've
you were
gone
on
over your
break.
time. Excuse me,
I
but you're
thought you
taking
went
time
on a
away from
break.
other audience members.
Well,
We
why
will
don't
take
you
a
just,
recess.
if you let me finish my statement, I'll go sit down. Which is that this is a subject that the community and the parents really should be discussing with the Board of Education. And it should be a separate issue where everybody is allowed to put in their input and speak. And that's what I had to
10
say.
minutes is
And now
plenty
I
of
will
time to
sit
give your
down
input, ma'am.
and Ron can talk.
Thank you. Mr. Hidalgo, please state your name and address.
Ronald Hidalgo, 335 Teaneck Road. I had a few things to say, but my wife just sent me a message and told me not to say anything. And Wayne pretty much, Mr. Demikoff pretty much touched on almost all the other issues that I wanted to say. And I would like to congratulate the board for taking credit on the vendors programs. I have something else to say that in order to avoid all these issues and all these problems that are arising in the community, I would like to ask you guys to resign.
Mr. Sadler.
Good evening again. So I came with a prepared
If you could
statement.
state your address, please.
Sure.
Sorry, we're getting away from
Jay Sean Sadler, 139 Overpeck Avenue.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I came here with a prepared statement this evening, but I just wanted to quickly respond to some of the things that I've heard. I wanted to correct you, President Gibbons. HIPAA actually does not apply to schools.
HERPA. I said HERPA, actually. HERPA is
Okay,
the,
so districts around the, districts around the country regularly report numbers of students and staff that are vaccinated. So that is a question that legally you can answer. I also wanted to respond to this issue regarding questions being answered through emails. You guys regularly, the board, with the singular exception of Dr. Martinez, has regularly ignored emails that I've sent. Mr. Cathcart, you can speak to that, and several others of you can speak to that. Emails are ignored, so please don't sit here and say that we can send emails and you'll respond, because that is not true. And all of you know that what I'm saying is absolutely 100% correct. Also, I would like to say, when we do ask questions at meetings, as we asked you, Mr. Gibbons, about the whole football issue, you promised us that you told myself and Ms. Ramos, I'm going to answer your questions at the end of the meeting. We waited until after 12 o'clock midnight, at which point you told us you could not answer the question. So we do not trust that you will ever answer our questions. We don't trust you. I just wanted to state that. I'll read my written statement now. I would like to thank all of the administrators, custodians, counselors, teachers, school nurses, and all other district employees for their hard work to get our kids off to an auspicious start to this school year. I've tried to reach out individually to particular staff members who have made my own children's transition back to school easier, but I'm sure I haven't expressed gratitude to all of you who deserve it. I want you all to know, even for those I haven't had the opportunity to speak to personally, that I sincerely appreciate all of your efforts. As a parent, it is incredibly humbling and even scary to acknowledge that we don't have full control over the people, environments, and systems that play such a critical role in our own children's lives. We all want the world for our children, and there is nothing we wouldn't do to protect them and to ensure that they have the best of everything that they need. It is for this reason that I and many other parents are here in this room or on Zoom tonight, and every night that these meetings are held. We are deeply invested, and we all want the absolute best for our children. There's no greater gift any school or district official can give to us than doing right by them. To give them your very best so that they have a chance at being their very best. Simultaneously, there's no greater rallying cry you can incite than by denying our children anything less than what they fully need and deserve. As individuals and as a collective community, we will fight most valiantly to ensure that our children have every chance to reach their full academic and human potentials. This is our life's mission and work. As such, I would like our board to know exactly what we expect of its members. We demand to have board members, individually and collectively, who are amicable rather than adversarial, collaborative rather than paternalistic in their dealings with our community. Board members who act with honesty and integrity rather than deceit, disrepute, and blatant disrespect for well-established ethics. Board members who communicate transparently rather than engaging in obfuscation. Board members who listen attentively and with care rather than board members who feign to listen as they laugh and ridicule while actively trying to silence us through the imposition of nonsensical policies. We demand board members who see community members as assets, as partners to be responsive to rather than dismissive of. Board members who answer all of our questions, whether they come through emails or at these meetings, not just the ones they arbitrarily choose to answer. We demand board members who sincerely value our insights and concerns regarding the district that we entrust them to oversee through our tax dollars, and ultimately on behalf of the most important parts of our lives, our children. These are our reasonable and fair demands. I believe that there are board members who are already meeting these demands, and I'm eternally grateful to those of you who are doing so. I look forward to continuing to work with you collaboratively as we push our district forward. To all board members who are not meeting these reasonable demands, I strongly urge you to begin doing so immediately. Believe me, I find no joy whatsoever in struggling against you. I would rather spend my finite time and energy working collaboratively with you for positive change. But given no other alternative, I and the many parents and community members in solidarity with me will do everything within our moral, ethical, and legal means to ensure your removal. We will always
Sir,
act
thank
with
you for your
integrity.
reading.
I'm almost finished. If you would allow me to finish. Thank you, sir. We will always act with integrity and the loving interest of our children for the positive progress of our school district. Thank you very much. And last but not least, I'd like to say Mr. Demikoff is the real MVP. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Raftery, I'd like to repeat, if there's any cursing or yelling, you can be removed from the meeting.
In regards to the new policy, as far as questions and answers go, I know we were expected to follow that policy. Our Board of Ed is not capable of doing the same. Why they live in constant ethics violations, violations of the rules, etc. So I don't know how you can expect us to follow policy when you do not follow policy. You, as the president of the Board of Education, serving as a football coach is a direct violation of state ethics policy. Going on next, I've been looking at a lot of the work of the Board of Education over the last couple of years. I see that in 2018, the board appointed the Little Ferry rep onto committees for the first time. The Little Ferry rep is the president of the Little Ferry Board of Education. We're still looking to recoup over $1 million from Little Ferry. Now, being the president of the Little Ferry Board of Education, I fail to see how he can operate in the best interest of Ridgefield Park, not only as a sitting member, but as a member of the committees, which are finance and negotiation. Now you have answered the last 4 people. Can you answer me? You're picking and choosing again.
The question.
When you want to answer, you answer.
You
Like
asked
you
several
did.
questions. Which question would you like answered? You asked several.
Well, we can start with Little Ferry. I think that would be a good answer.
As a representative, a Little Ferry board member can be a member of the committee, and we followed legal counsel when that happened.
Where does that say?
The law.
The law, what law?
Our
We've looked
legal
at it for-
counsel.
We've looked at it for 2 days. There is nothing to state. The Little Ferry rep from the sending district is to serve on the receiving district's committees.
Where does it say that he can't? I'm sorry.
I can address that,
Thank you.
just as far as it being a legal question. The statute in 18A provides that Little Ferry has the legal right to appoint its representative to the board, and that representative serves as a member on the board. So they have all the rights. There are some very minor things that are excluded, but they have all the rights of a sitting board member.
It says no place they have a right to serve on the committee.
So it doesn't say that. You are correct, Mr. Rafferty, but the statute does say that the representative is a sitting board member.
I understand that. Who made the decision in 2018 to have Little Ferry on the Ridgefield Park Board of Ed committees?
The Board of Education.
And why was it started? You're talking about a district that owed us over $2 million. Right now, we still don't have $1 million of it. No contract, and we're putting them on committees.
Did that, first of all, it's totally incorrect. The
Of
contracts have
Ridgefield
been
Park.
signed.
Money?
I think our attorney is going to answer that question.
It's a shame you need an attorney to answer your questions. We are supposed to be on the same side.
It's within the discretion of the Board of Education president to name members to committees.
Just to repeat that, I'm sorry.
Sure, it's within the discretion of the Board of Education president to name board members to the various committees.
Thank you.
The board president makes the determination on who sits on each committee.
That's not my question. My question is, why, out of nowhere in 2018, why were they all of a suddenly appointed to committees?
I assume the answer is that the Board of Ed president made that determination.
Who made that determination?
The Board of Education president, the president makes that determination.
And Mr. Raftery, I'm sorry, but we're taking a time away from other audience members that have to speak. We're over the time.
All right, so we have no answer for that? You're pushing me, old man. You're pushing me. Mr. Gibbons, you need to get control of your people.
The questions were answered, Mr. Raftery. Oh,
What
we
was
answered
the, you
question.
tell me what the answer was.
At the president's discretion, which our attorney stated, the board president allowed a little
And what was
sitting
the
pre- to be
reasoning
the
for
president
that?
of the committee.
What was the reasoning for that?
Experience and knowledge.
Experience
Thank you very much,
and
Mr. Raftery.
knowledge. What does that got to do with a Little Ferry, though? I'm asking you about Little Ferry. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Raftery.
Okay.
Your time is up. Excuse me. We have other audience members that have to speak.
all right. So
With
the
all due
answer
respect,
is,
sir.
the answer is,
Please,
Mr.
the microphone-
Thiemann,
Please leave the microphone, sir, with all due respect.
Mr. Thiemann
I'd like
decided
to
to
call the next
appoint
speaker.
the Little Ferry rep, just so the people of Ridgefield
I'd
Park
like to-
know. The Little Ferry rep
Excuse me, but you're
to
taking time away
handle
from other
the
audience members who
Ridgefield
want to
Park
speak. As we'll be having a
taxpayers'
hard stop,
money.
you have to be respectful to others, giving them a chance to speak.
Respect, sir, is a two-way street.
You're not following the rules, sir. Thank you, please.
You don't follow the rules. How can you expect us to follow the rules?
Excuse me, but
You're out
taking
there
time
coaching
away from
football.
other audience members who want to speak.
You're out there coaching football. You expect us to follow
You're
the
taking-
rules?
Please leave the microphone.
You're expecting us to follow the rules? You gotta be kidding.
Ms. Dwyer, please. Thank you for your comments.
Dawn Dwyer, 199 Bergen Turnpike.
Good
Just
evening.
to follow up on Mr. Rafferty, as a chair of the negotiations, has Mr. Trustee Demikoff, I'm sorry, has Trustee Phaedros ever been chair of the negotiations?
Yes,
So how can the chair of the negotiations negotiate within himself?
he didn't negotiate within Little Ferry.
But he was negotiating with Little Ferry on their contracts as a Ridgefield Park Board of Education member. But yet he
No,
was
that's
a
not the
member
case,
of
ma'am.
Little Ferry.
That's not the case, ma'am.
So can you explain to me how that's not the case?
The contract negotiations are for staff. That's what negotiations are for, administrative, supervisory, and other staff members as teachers.
So the negotiations committees does not, as
Works
being
together
part
with
of the
those members.
negotiation committee, he does not negotiate the rate of the students.
No. The state does that.
Okay, how
as
about
of
the
now.
finance? Has he ever been chairperson of the finance committee?
He never negotiated any Little Ferry fees being paid here.
Okay, but as a chairperson of the negotiation, the finance committee, would he then negotiate with Little Ferry the rates that their students
No.
would pay? So who sets that rate?
The state of New
Okay,
Jersey.
so how at that point do they owe us over $2 million that Mr. Demikoff had to fight for?
Yeah.
Mr. Demikoff, can you answer that question?
What happens is you set a estimated rate between the two districts. And that's an estimated rate pending a adjusted rate that's calculated by the state of New Jersey. Once that adjusted rate is calculated and given to the districts, then you take a look at what your estimated rate was versus your new adjusted and certified rate by the state. If they paid too much, we would pay them back money. If they did not pay enough, then we would charge them the difference in the rate. And that's what we have recouped in what I had said earlier this evening. And right now, the 18-19 rate adjustment is in over $1 million.
So
And
now
we've asked them to pay for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
And we've asked them to pay that amount. The other two rates that we collected, we had to go to litigation to get. I don't know what the status of this one will be.
Okay, so now during the time that Mr. Phydros was on the finance committee, is that the time of the deficit from Little Ferry?
Well, I want to be fair here. He has nothing to do with that tuition rate, but that's the period of time that they owed us money. But he had nothing to do with sitting on the finance committee and that determination being done by the state.
Mr. Demikoff, if I may, is it fair to say that when I came on in 2016, that the district was already in deficit and that the monies that were being collected from the audit were prior to me coming on the board? Is that a fair assessment? Is that a fair statement?
The deficit was determined on as of June 30th, 2016. And I don't know
Correct, but
what.
those were for monies prior to that year, correct? Those are for
Correct.
tuitions that were from previous years, correct?
Previous years,
Just to be transparent and fair. The other issue is that the contracts that were signed, right? There was one contract in particular signed by the BA of Little Ferry that allowed for some kind of adjustment where other contracts didn't. And now this current $1 million, $1,042,000 and change, is predicated on your on your assessment of the prior litigation, and that's where this new ask for the money is coming from. It's not something that was contractually not followed through on, that you're basing it off of the prior result of the prior litigation. That's where this 1,042 is. We have signed all the contracts. Is that not correct? And that's how so that $1 million is now being accounted for. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's fair.
Is that based on an interpretation of the previous settlement and how you're now asking for this new $1 million? Fair, yes or no?
It's not a yes or no answer.
But based on interpretation of the lawsuit, no?
If you might let me.
Absolutely,
judge
yeah,
that
I'm sorry.
rule, that whether the contract has an adjustment clause or not, the district is entitled to the adjusted amount. And I think that's fair to say because that's the truth.
Okay,
So
but I'm
now-
saying to you that we've paid everything up through June 30th. We've signed all the contracts. This new $1 million ask is something that was just requested in the last 60, 70 days, correct?
It was just
It was-
requested.
On
the last
June
week of
29th.
June.
Yes.
Yes, the last week of June.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
so prior to that, it wasn't an outstanding issue, but as of June 29th, it's now an outstanding issue. So Little Ferry is looking into it on their end. And like I think you've already know that we're looking into it and we're gonna get back to Ridgefield Park with our perspective on where we stand with this new $1 million ask. It's just recently asked as of June 29th.
Yeah,
Prior to that, there wasn't an issue. I'm just being clear. So everybody, it's very transparent of what the timeline is. That this wasn't money that we've been owing for over a year or 2 years. And this is an ask as of June 29th.
That's correct, but it would be
Okay.
nice to hear from Little Ferry. How many months has
Okay,
it
I
been?
will see to it that you will hear from Little Ferry and have a response from us prior to the next meeting. Fair enough?
Well, that's fair enough, and it would be
Okay.
nice when Little Ferry sends a letter to the county office that Little Ferry copies us on it, since we're involved in it. That would be common
Okay, but I'm saying to you, I don't, okay, if there
Wouldn't
was a
it?
letter sent by the administration, I mean, okay, we're gonna go down this road. I will make sure that I inform the superintendent, any letters going to send to the county, the police CC, Ridgefield Park and the state monitor. Fair enough?
That would be fair enough. That would be common courtesy, yes.
Okay, well, did I write the letter?
No.
Depend by me? Okay, but
But
now
doesn't
you're
the
asking me,
superintendent
I'll see
report
to
to the
it.
board? Does the superintendent report to the board?
Yeah, okay, but I'll see, I don't
so.
read I don't have every letter in front of me, but I'll see to it that gets done. Okay?
Okay, very good. That's great.
Thank you.
Then maybe
Okay.
we'll hear something shortly.
Well, if I tell you it's gonna get done, it's gonna get done. So I'll make sure it happens.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. Otherwise, we'd probably be waiting till Christmas to get a response from the superintendent.
Well, I'll let him know that. Thank you.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
I definitely will. You got it, Mr. Demikoff.
Great.
Ms. Salcido? And then we'll move on after the last speaker here. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The first thing I want to say is I just want to thank personally to Dr. Bender.
I'm sorry, ma'am. If the crowd could just lower their voices, we can't hear the speaker.
The first thing I want to do is I want to thank personally Dr. Bender for all the initiatives that she started that were spoken about and explained at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you, Dr. Bender, for that. The second thing that I want to do is I want to thank Mr. Demikoff, the state monitor, for the new Chromebooks. I honestly didn't even think about all the times after he spoke, all the times that my kids had problems with the Chromebooks last year, and all the times that they lapsed, and all the times that they stopped completely, and all the times that they went dead. And I completely forgot about that until he mentioned it. And when my boys came home with the new Chromebooks, they were so excited and so happy. And I know it's only been a couple of days or a few days with them, but they've worked wonderfully. And I want to thank him for that. And the last thing I just want to mention, maybe suggest, after what the other community member mentioned, Janet, about the traffic. Mr. Koenig, back in the day when he was principal, he had suggested a couple of things. One, he wrote actually an email to all the parents suggesting, and he did it at the Board of Ed meeting too, suggesting for parents to drop off their kids on Overpeck Avenue, leaving through Poplar so that they didn't have to come around. So that's, I thought, a very good suggestion. I live on Union Place, and I do see a lot more traffic today than I used to back in the day. And then the other thing that he did, if I remember correctly, which I know a lot of companies do also, is they give incentives like a pedometer, you know, for the kids. Every kid can have a pedometer in his phone. All of them have phones. And maybe this can come from the interim superintendent or the principals or the principal from the high school, where she could incentivize the kids by giving them like a free ice cream or a free whatever, you know, something like that, that I think might give the kids some ideas of just like, okay, let me walk, mom, because I could get this or something like that, you know? Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Some great ideas, Ms. Salcido. Thank you. Christina Ramos. Thank you, ma'am. We'd now like to move on to online comments, which we have several.
Chris, while they're queuing that up, I'd like to make a brief statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did
As a
anybody have a
comment-
statement?
Yeah, while we're queuing up the next person.
Okay, I didn't know if we were gonna move on to the finishing the comments and then.
I wanted to bring the public's attention to, it's been 20 years since September 11th. And we had a couple of people in this town who lost their lives on that day, and many people who were affected, the entire country was. And I wanted to bring up this individual, Lenny Haddon, who I'd heard his name before. I've been in town almost 20 years. I know many of you probably know him personally and know his family personally, the loss. He was Ridgefield Park homegrown. He was a star athlete. He was a Marine. And he was an FBI agent. He married his high school sweetheart, who was also from this town and raised 4 kids here. He also went back into the towers voluntarily. He was not assigned to the area. He went back into the towers, and the last witnesses say that he, after rescuing several people, he went back into the towers. I think that this is the kind of hero, I know he would probably disagree with me using that word, but that we need to look up to in this town. And I wanted to draw attention because most of our kids in this district were born after September 11th, and memory fades quickly. And I wanted to propose to the board that we honor him as a star athlete and as a good member of this community by making sure that his name is embossed on the gym floor, which is currently torn up right now. I think that having our kids walk by a name such as his would be something that's inspirational. It would be a way to memorialize him in this town forever, and in particular with our youth, which, kids tend to forget what happens right before they were born, and they think the world starts then. So I'd like to make a motion that the board vote on right now the gym floor is torn up, and I think it would be an ideal time to have a fresh start and put down Mr. Hatton's name on the gym floor. So I'd like to make that motion for the board to vote on.
Thank you.
If I might, Chris, before you do that, Lenny Hatton was a friend of mine. Lenny was an FBI agent, right? He was a captain in the Marine Corps also. He wasn't in the towers when that happened. He had just got back from investigating the bombing of the Cole and the killing, and he was up on an adjoining building radioing in the fact that it was a terrorist attack. And when the building collapsed, it fell on him. He is a hero. He was an exemplary FBI agent, and he was a counterterrorist specialist.
Just want to say also, and there's a great video out there on Lenny, on his life. My father spoke with him at the football game just that previous day. But also, just want to recognize that Sam Zinzi was also a Ridgefield Park graduate and died at the Towers also. So I always want to remember both of them.
Thank you. And also, Mr. Hatton is a legend. He's in the Hall of Fame. His name and number are up in the field house forever to remember. I always remember the speeches he'd give us in high school to pump us up. But Mr. Zinzi, Mr. Hatton, and Mr. Graves all lost their lives having to do with 9/11 illness or what happened there.
So
And I
Chris,
think it's a good time to.
can I make a motion that we put their names on the gym floor?
I
and
I just
dedicate the
wanted to
gym to
finish,
them?
Dr. Martinez.
I'm
I'm sorry. I'd like to take a moment of silence for those in Ridgefield Park and all of the ones who lost their lives in 9/11. Thank you. Trustee Gomes.
It sounds like we have quite a few names. I think we should probably sit down in a committee meeting and really discuss it, because, I mean, do we want one name? Do we want 4 names, 5 names? I think it's a great thing that we're looking to do. Maybe even put like a little twin towers or something on the floor also. I think we should discuss it properly instead of just like quickly, make a decision and there's like 5 names. It's like, let's give a 6 name.
Yeah,
We really
so-
need to talk about it properly.
So maybe we can put a pause on, I don't want to delay the construction. The reason I came up with this idea was because the floor is torn up right now. But I also don't feel comfortable tabling things on this board because we don't get back to them sometimes. So I'm a little bit hesitant.
I'm gonna
say,
make sure we get
let's
back
talk
to
about
Stay
it
on it,
later.
I'm sure we'll get back to it.
And then the clock might run down.
The floor is going down. I'm sorry.
The floor is torn up right now.
Oh, the floor is.
The new floor is going down.
Yes. So I'd like to to have a discussion in buildings and grounds, which we're gonna have a meeting soon about that. To absolutely great idea, Dr. Martinez, and thank you for bringing it up. And we would like to finish public comments. We have several members of the public that are now on the line that we'd like to promote. The first one, if we could.
Chris, just to finish that up, I'm going to be asking for a public vote on how that gym is dedicated and that it be somebody who truly represents the heroes. of this town.
Absolutely, we should discuss it as stated in a buildings and grounds meeting all together. And that was a great idea.
I'm just a little bit confused. So you're going to discuss it at the buildings and ground, but no action can be taken in the committee because there isn't a majority of the board.
It's
So,
a recommendation.
I'm sorry?
It would be a recommendation. If, you know,
Do we have a
Would you
date
please
when
explain
the
that?
floor is being put in?
I'm sorry.
Can you explain, what do you mean a recommendation? Because a gym floor is going to be put down, correct?
Yeah.
No, I understand that. So it'll be a recommendation and then the next time we're meeting is going to be in October. So it'll be okay. But we need to plan for these things and not leave things for last minute. So you're
I don't
going to
mean
make
to
a
derail, you know.
recommendation and then you're going to discuss it at the next meet. I just wanted some clarity.
No problem.
That's okay. So you're gonna discuss at the committee, make the recommendation, discuss it, possibly make the recommendation, and then we'll discuss it in October. Possibly. It's a lot of possibilities
That
here.
sounds good, trustee. I'd like to finish public comments now because there have been people waiting patiently. If there's anything else we could discuss. Yeah. And we could actually discuss it in new business if anybody has anything further to say after public comments. Thank you. We can promote the next person. Good evening.
Ingrid Raftery, 54 Euclid.
Good evening, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I want to really thank Dr. Martinez because I actually saw that video and his suggestion is wonderful. One important thing I need to mention though, it's great to have, names on the floors, but I think that in all the classes, especially 7th to 12th, this needs to be discussed with all the students so they understand. Also for 9/11, it would be great if the students have a discussion, and understand what really happened. That's up to each individual teacher, of course, when it's convenient for that day. What I also want to mention is we do not have a gym floor right now. My question is, what do the students do in that hour when they're supposed to have gym? Because right now the weather is beautiful. I asked my granddaughter the other day, do you play volleyball outside? Do you use the track? Do you run around? Do you, play basketball or any kinds of sports that they can do as a team? And she said to me, well, right now we're just walking around. It would be great to see that they do something like, a volleyball or basketball or track outside during that 45 minutes that they have gym. It's very important that our children exercise.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can you give me an answer to that, please, if that can be addressed as soon as possible? Because I'm not sure when that new gym floor will be put in.
I appreciate the comment, and I will be bringing that up to the high school administration so we can discuss that.
Thank you very much.
I agree with you. I think the weather outside has been gorgeous, and we should take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. Just a moment. We're having a little difficulty here technically. Be right with you.
Mr. Iannico, can you please raise and lower your hand again? I'm having technical difficulties.
Mr. Iannicone, if you could just raise and lower your hand. Yeah, maybe it was a raise. Mistake. If there's a question, if we missed you, please refer to the district's website to ask the question, and we'll be able to get back to you. Unfinished business? Make a motion.
Wait, can I just make a comment? Oh, sorry.
Yes, this is
a
a
motion to adjourn.
This would be the time. Yes,
Make a comment.
because we don't have any more public
Okay,
comments.
Do you
I
need a
just
motion
wanna-
to adjourn, Chris?
can I just make a quick
Trustee
comment?
Rodriguez is speaking, actually.
I just want to publicly thank all the educators, administrators, case managers, child study team. I have a long list here. Bus aides, bus driver, custodian, secretary, parents, caregivers. And my child was remote all of last year. Yes, I was a little bit anxious sending my child in, but now I have a child who's eager to go back to school, developed a love for reading, goes to sleep with books on his bed. And it all has to do with the programs. Thank you for Dr. Haynes and all the principals, especially the elementary principals, because they are a great team. They do collaborate, and they did give an informational session right before the day before school started, and you can clearly see that they work together. And I do like the fact that you do have this great Envision program. You're providing professional development to your staff. And there is that collaboration with Little Ferry, and Mr. Kata is collaborating with the math supervisor. So, let's not lose focus. The focus is our children. Let's try and get along. But I just really want to thank every person who answered my many emails and my many phone calls and reassured me that it is time to send our children back. And underneath those masks, there are a lot of smiling faces.
Thank you. On the table, we have a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.